Welcome back to the Aussie Shed, ladies and gentlemen, for another episode of Project Fairlady. Main focus of this episode, folks, is modifying the fuel pump hanger to take a Walbro 460 pump, AN line conversion, and a few other little bits and pieces. So, without further ado, let's get the fuel tank out, start modifying this fuel pump hanger. So I've just got the fuel tank out of the car, folks. So this is your typical 2+0 saddle tank that's in these things. You can see it's got a few markings on it and stuff. I've actually just hosed it off. It had a really thick layer of dust all over it. And externally it actually seems pretty good. I'm yet to sort of get inside the tank and have a look if there's any corrosion and stuff in it. But we'll sort of get to that. So you can see over here the work that's been done on these pipes. As I sort of showed earlier, you can see where the lines come up from under the car. So you've got your feed line, which is this guy here, and your return line, which is this guy here, and then you've got your evap line, which is this one here. And you can see that just goes to a breather in the top of the tank there. It's just basically a hole where you can draw vacuum on the tank. So you can see what they've done here. They've just disconnected these guys, and you can see they've kind of hacked them up quite a bit, probably just to try and get them off. It's still not really clear to me why the hell they did this. I just can't sort of see the logic behind it. I know that they ran these lines in so they could feed their dodgy surge tank under the car and everything, but I just don't understand why they didn't do that from this point down here rather than doing this. So we'll go around the back and have a bit of a look. So you guys would remember this from under the car where they've just hacked off the feed and return pipes here. Now, just shortly away from that, they actually finish and go into a rubber hose anyway, so I really don't know why they didn't just disconnect them there and then use that to do the feed and return for their friggin' dodgy surge tank and pump arrangement that they had. Why they went to the effort of running new lines and, you know, hacking all this up and everything, honestly, I think they just really didn't understand the arrangement on the vehicle, which, I don't know, once again, I find it hard to fathom stuff like this, folks, because it just seems contrary to logic, you know. Anyway, so what I'm left with having to do is I will remove these three pipes here and replace them. I may cut this breather line off and keep that, but these two are going to be replaced with -6 AN Teflon hose anyway, which will go straight from the outlets on the pump hanger and, you know, all the way into the fittings under the car that you saw me set up in the last video, which is the you know, your fuel return and fuel filter and all that sort of stuff. That'll be the first join in the AN system. But in order to do that, we have to modify the fuel pump hanger, which is on the list to do. Once again, I've got to get it out and have a good look at it, but I'm pretty confident I can modify the hanger to fit the new fuel pump. I have a Walbro 460 sitting on the shelf there ready to go in it, and I have like AN bulkhead fittings and all this kind of stuff that I can chop these original fittings out and replace them. So we'll just see, but either way, this stuff's going to have to be removed and kind of fixed up. So that's where I am with it, folks. I just thought I'd show you the tank on the initial removal before we do any modification to it, and just show you this stuff so you kind of get a little bit better of an idea what I was talking about. You guys probably already understood it, but yeah, it's just, you know, it's just a big cock up as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, folks, tank looks pretty tidy so far. So I guess the next step is pulling the fuel pump hanger and everything out and having a look at that and seeing what we can do with it. Alrighty, folks, as you can see here, the fuel pump hanger is out of the vehicle, out of the fuel tank, and on the bench. So now I've just got to work out how the hell I'm going to do all this. So you can see here I've got a brand new Walbro 460 fuel pump, I've got the fuel pump hanger, and I've got a big box of random AN fittings. Now all I've got to do is work out how to put the whole thing together into something useful. So I'll just turn the camera off and have a bit of a think about this, folks, and see what I can work out. And I'll see you back in a little while. Right, folks, we've fairly torn down now This is kind of the basics of the fuel pump hanger here. As you can see, that's where your fuel pump feeds out of through there. That's the main sort of pump setup. That's your return line, and that is the bleed line from the other side of the saddle tank that goes into the Venturi. This is the Venturi setup here that works to provide suction to the other side of the saddle tank, so it fills back into this side where the pump is. Very delicate, folks. This was very, very hard getting this apart without breaking it. I've no idea really what I'm doing with this stuff either, as I've never really pulled any Z32 stuff apart before. I'm just kind of going off my basic knowledge of things, you might say, that I have. And getting this apart, yeah, quite tricky. It's all kind of plastic, sort of plastic tabs that sort of lock in. You can see here, sorry folks, I've got a tiny little screen on my camera and I can't really see if you guys can see what I can see, but there's little locking tabs, 3 of them on each of these, and they actually, when this goes together, they actually clip over that edge there, right? And it's very hard getting 6 of them open at the same time to be able to pull this apart, you know. And then this piece here takes quite a lot of effort to then like slide off these hoses, because there's a little recess in the top of these and it hooks over this expanded section in the pipe. I'm not sure whether you actually need to pull this apart to get this off after getting it apart, because you know it's a piece. I'm sure you wouldn't be able to buy this from this, and I'm sure they'd want to sell you the whole pump hanger. Correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but yeah, I was just trying to be super delicate with it so I didn't break anything, but I think you could possibly just pull it off from here. I don't think you really need to separate this section. I'm not sure, because the pipe was held in quite well with these sort of built-in O-rings in this piece. Maybe it is easier to get this off first and then remove this, or just pull the whole thing off together. I'm really not sure, but I'm pretty happy that I managed to get the whole thing apart without breaking anything, without breaking any of the tabs and all that kind of stuff, which is what I was trying to do. So I've achieved my goal, and that's pretty bloody fantastic. Alright, we'll just put that down there. Now, next thing to note is that this hanger had already been modified to fit another fuel pump. It has a Walbro 255 in it, the GSS 342. It was already fitted to it, so there were sort of modifications already made to it, which I've got to kind of get around as well. Now, first of all, you can see where the fuel pump connects up to the pickup line. They've kind of gone at it with what looks like a soldering iron. You can see all the marks on here where someone sort of had to go out melting the plastic together. And they've done the same thing on the filter retainer on the pump here. They've sort of pushed that through and then melted the lug over on the top of this piece here. Now, I'm not sure what that is, whether that's off the original pump. But and they've done the same thing here. They've kind of melted it over the top of this piece. It's all pretty sort of manky looking, and yeah, I don't really get it. But I'm going to have to pull this apart and just see what the hell is the go with it. I don't see why I can't just put this brown piece onto the bottom of the 460. I just don't think this is going to really be suitable. I don't know. I've got to look at it, folks. I've got to look at it. It might be alright. I've just kind of got to see. So what we have to do with the hanger, folks, is we've got to modify it to take AN fittings. So all this section here has to be cut away to give us a way that we can put a bulkhead fitting through, and that means cutting this off and then kind of drilling it out to take a bulkhead fitting. And the same with this piece here for the return line. It'll have to be cut off sort of on both sides, and then drilled through with a step drill. I'd say it'd be the way to do it until it ends up at the right size. And it's very close to that edge there, though. We'll have to see. I might have to. I don't know. I got to work it out, folks. All this stuff requires quite a little bit of thought and effort. I might have to kind of get it out and then go to one side. It depends. It's very close to the ridge on this hat. I may not get a good seal against it by the time I sort of enlarge it. And this is a little bit tricky too, because to get a bulkhead nut on there, there's not a whole heap of room. I might have to trim some of this bracket here away as well. But we'll see, folks. So once again, I'll just go off into my own little world inside my brain and try and work out exactly how I'm going to do this, and hopefully come up with some sort of a solution that you guys can follow to be able to do this yourself. But there are hurdles with it, folks. There are hurdles. Who knows, it may not work. I may end up having to buy a whole new fuel pump hanger. But that's your sort of pickup hose. There's issues with that as well. But like I said, I'll cross this bridge when I come to it. We'll just see what happens. It's only my time I'm wasting, folks. If I hack it all up and it doesn't work, well, you know, that's the way it is. Live and learn. You can see this is the fuel pump mount. It's been cut by someone. I say to get the factory pump out. I don't know how this kind of how snugly this fitted on the factory pump. I'd say it was a fairly snug fit, and there's a bit of a band clamp that goes around it, this guy here, that clamps it onto the fuel pump hanger body. But yeah, obviously we've got to reuse this because it's what sort of hangs the pump on the hanger. But yeah, I'll have a look at that as well and see whether it's going to work for us or whether we need to modify it further or whatever. But lots of little issues, but I don't think there's really anything that I can't get over, you know. But I guess we'll just have to see. We'll just have to see, folks. I'll just have a bit of a fiddle and see what I come up with. Rather than you guys having to sit there and watch me bugger stuff up, I'll get it all nutted out and I'll do a bit to the hanger and I'll show you exactly what I've done and I'll explain it. So hopefully it's something that you guys can follow as well. Alright, folks, I'll be back. Okay, folks, it's starting to come together. This is where I'm at now with it. We're sort of starting to get there. Alright, so where do I begin? So you saw me cutting the old fittings off here and everything and sort of cleaning that up. That was reasonably easy to do. The feed area here was a little bit more complicated because there was that little sort of standoff sitting on there that had to be removed. And I also had to get this back to a flat surface so I could put a sealing washer on the bottom there to sort of seal it all up. You know, obviously you need a nice flat area to do that. This area here where it's close to where the edge sort of turns up on the outside of the hat there, that was a little bit problematic. I've had to sort of shape the sealing washer on that side. Not a huge thing, but just a little bit of a pain in the bum. So you can see what I've got on here is two AN6 90-degree bulkhead fittings going through there, and I've got some sealing washers. They're well, we used to call them Doughty seals, but these are actually Aeroflow GBs. That's these guys here. Stato seals. These are AN6 Stato seals. So what these are, it's a washer with like a vulcanized O-ring on both sides that sort of compresses. They're really good. They're sort of the best seal that you can buy when you have to clamp two flat surfaces together. They work really, really well. And in this kind of situation with fuel, you really need to use the best way of sealing possible. I've got some sort of Teflon washers here as well. These are okay, and they quite possibly would have done the job, but I know they're really good in like water and fuel water and oil situations. But fuel is one of the hardest things to prevent leaking, because it's fine, as in on a sort of on a molecular level. As far as I know, I'm not a scientist, but fuel, apparently, the reason why fuel leaks very easily is it's got very tiny molecules, and it can get through really, really tight spaces where things like water and oil and stuff can't actually fit through, but fuel does. So in other words, you need to seal fuel stuff up the absolutely best way possible. Now those Aeroflow Stato seals, they're E85 compatible as well, as is everything that I'm trying to do here, because I am going to run it on flex fuel, you know. Now most of the sealing actually happens with things like this on the backside. Like this is really where all the sealing occurs, on the outside. And the reason being that on the inside, you can seal that surface against the washer, and you can seal the washer against the nut, but you can't stop fluid or liquid traveling down the threads of the bulkhead fitting unless you seal the threads with some thread sealer or some thread tape. But still, E85 compatibility and all that sort of stuff. And realistically, the seal on the outside will seal it anyway, because there is no thread section to leak through. So you can see on the outside, you've got a flat surface on the underside of the bulkhead fitting that's then against the raised O-ring section on the dowdy seal, and then there's a raised O-ring on that on the other side going against the hat here. There's nowhere where fuel can permeate through like there is on the inside, with the issues with the thread there. But I've got seals on there anyway, just because. So yeah, that it was time consuming, but certainly doable. So that's pretty good. So you can see what I've got here too. This is just an AN6. Let me get this off. That's just an AN6 hose barb that I've got there. 3/8 hose barb, AN6, and that just matches up with the 3/8 hose barb that's on the Walbro pump. That guy there, it has a 3/8 hose barb. So there's just a small piece of hose to join those two together. While I was at it in here, I've desoldered the fuel pump wires from the Walbro 255, and I've soldered in the connection for the 460, so you'll be able to plug and unplug it. So if I find the 460 is not enough, depending on what power this thing makes on ethanol, I can upgrade to maybe a Hellcat pump or whatever, and it'll just be sort of plug and play. While I had the soldering iron out and was doing that, I've also upgraded the wiring on the other side. Now this is a little bit tricky. I looked at getting this electrical connection apart, but it seems to be pushed in from this side and then sort of folded over and riveted on the other side. So you really don't have access to where the wire goes into that connector at all. It's it's a little bit tricky. So I've gone as close as I can to where the wire comes out on the pump supply and the pump negative, and I've soldered in new wires, new heavier gauge wires that are all just sort of spooled up here. So really we only have a very short amount of the original fuel pump wiring, which is a little bit small. It's actually I've certainly seen a lot lighter gauge fuel pump wiring than what was on here, but with wiring the resistance builds over the length. So ideally you'd like to replace the whole thing, but if you can't, you just want to cut that original piece short as possible and hope that it doesn't get sort of too hot and build up too much resistance in that short amount that we have there. There's, unfortunately, from what I could tell, and if someone has a better idea, please leave a comment. I just couldn't get around that problem. So anyway, we'll see what happens. I think it'll be okay, but it's all sort of ready to go anyway, because this is going to be rewired with a relay that's triggered by the ECU anyway, so it's all basically just set up to do that. So you can see I've also got orientation marks here for the AN line, so that when I tighten these up, they're all facing in the right direction and everything like that. Now the fuel pump needs to go in a sleeve before it goes into here. You can see the 255 had a sleeve on it as well, which is really crusty. It's really dried out, and just if you squeeze it too hard, it'll break. So I've ordered a new neoprene E85 compatible sleeve for this to fit it in there to be able to clamp it, rather than just trying to cut a piece out of this and maybe do this clamp up really tight, or cable ties or something, to be able to sort of sandwich it in there. Much better off if I put a neoprene sleeve on there and get it a lot closer in size, so that it'll actually sandwich up better. Okay, what else? Now this is a really tricky thing, folks. I'll put it back down on the bench just so I've got a free hand so I can sort of show you. This is the real tricky thing, this piece here. This piece is what's going to stop your average person being able to do this modification. As in the AN line modification, the pump modification isn't really the biggest issue with this setup. It's really changing the AN lines, and the reason being is I'll leave that on there for a second. I'll just throw the Venturi pump back on. So your Venturi pump goes on here like this, folks. You've got to be really gentle with this. So that's where your Venturi pump goes, like that. And this was originally a metal pipe. I'll see if I can dig it up. Give me a second. No, it looks like I've chucked it, but the piece of pipe that was coming from the original return line here was like this one. You'll see it in the earlier footage of the video. But the problem is we've got to adapt this to the AN connection. So what we have to do is reproduce how the Venturi pump connects to it, which it was just, as you see there, it just had a raised section in the middle. Oh, my seals come off. Yeah, it had a raised section in the middle, just like this, which you can see there. And that's what this clips over, which holds the Venturi pump on. When these guys go on, it oh, I'm around the wrong way. When these guys go on, it clamps over that sort of raised section there to lock the Venturi pump in place. It just sort of pushes on harder. These things expand and there's a little recess in them, and they lock over that. So you've got to be able to duplicate that to make this sort of work, you know. So that's one side of it, and then the other side of it is you've got to make it to be able to connect up to your AN bulkhead fitting. So what I did here was I just used another AN6 hose tail, just the same as this guy, and I just took the center section out of it, which just slides out, and I just made up my own piece to duplicate that end of the hose tail. So what we've got there is a collar to hold it into the fitting, the same as what this has, and that's a 37-degree female flare, the same as this one on here, so that sits up against a 37-degree male flare on the bulkhead fitting like that, and then the retaining collar pulls it in nice and tight. So to make this, you need a lathe, and you guys would have seen me use my mini lathe over in the corner of the shed there. It's invaluable for doing like sort of car modification work. I use it all the time to make all sorts of bits and pieces. Without that, I couldn't have done this, because I can't think of a way that I could get around this problem without making up a piece like this. So yeah, it kind of makes it not really a DIY thing unless you can work out a way to do this without a lathe, or if you've got a lathe, more power to you, you're certainly able to do this. But yeah, that's sort of the key piece, and without that it doesn't, I can't think of a way to make this possible, you know. Obviously you can still do the pump, but just not have the AN stuff, and for me that was a requirement, because I want to be able to have a complete AN line fuel system in the car, just because that's what I always do, and it's super safe, and it just works with everything. It's, you know, particularly if you're using E85 or flex fuel, because as long as you're using Teflon hose for everything, you know it's all going to be 85 safe, and you just won't have any issues with anything, you know, like rotting hoses and all that sort of crap. And you saw how dodgy the old fuel system was on this car, and obviously I want to make something that is the exact opposite of that, which isn't really that hard to do. It just takes a bit of thought, you know. Yeah, because car fires aren't good, folks. So yeah, this piece here, folks, it's the one that make or breaks it. So anyway, you can see what I've got there now. It's pretty much ready. Like I say, I'm waiting on the sleeve. I'm waiting for a little piece of E85 compatible submersible hose, because any hose that's in the fuel tank has to be rated to be submersible. I didn't have any submersible hose in that size to hook this up, so I had to order a piece. It's on its way. It's not here yet, obviously. The neoprene sleeve isn't here yet either, but I'm pretty close. It's pretty close to sort of being finished. So what I'm doing here, you can see, as I said, I've got alignment marks on the fuel pump hanger assembly, so that I can start building the lines that run off the tank. So this can actually go in the tank mounted like this. At least now I have these on here. So what I'm going to do at the moment, folks, just to kill a bit of time until these bits get here, is I'm going to mount this back in the tank and just start setting up the lines that come off here, and you know, yeah, doing a bit of that just while I wait on all this stuff. It's got to be done anyway, so I might as well do it now. At least, you know, as you can see, the float here is tied up with a cable tie, so it's actually in a pretty good position to be, because I'll have to take it in and out quite a few times. So at least nothing will get sort of damaged. So yeah, folks, it's I'm pretty happy with it. Oh, this hose here, the suction line to the other side of the saddle tank, it needs a little bit of bending. Like, it's fairly close to where it needs to be, but this piece that comes off here has a bit of shape in it as well, and they just don't line up anymore. So you have to kind of straighten this one out a bit. This kink that it has here was actually more pronounced than that originally. I've had to sort of straighten it out to get the gap right here, because obviously I can't put a bend in this. But yeah, it's just, you know, that was not that hard to do, but just another thing that you need to do, folks, that's all. So for the moment, I'll go and have a fiddle with a few lines and wait for some stuff to turn up. See you soon. Right, folks, the fuel pump hanger's looking pretty good now. Most of the stuff that I need has arrived here, and it's sitting here pretty much in as finished condition. Now, just a couple of corrections from the earlier footage. I was talking about the new sleeve for the new fuel pump, and I mentioned that the new sleeve was neoprene. Sorry, folks, the old sleeve was neoprene, and the new sleeve is nitrile. And nitrile is more like this outer casing. It's more of sort of a dense hard rubber. So the new sleeve's on there. The new nitrile sleeve is on there. You can't really see it, but it's a really nice fit. Goes on there really well. New bit of submersible hose there. 3/8 submersible hose. That's all very good now. I ended up reusing this, a bit of a strange concoction on the bottom of the fuel pump here that had been set up previously with the previous fuel pump install, just because the orientation was pretty good as far as the angle of where the fuel pickup and everything comes out. So it seems to be holding together really well. There's no issues with it. It doesn't seem to be coming apart at all. So yeah, I've kept it just because it's held up for this long, and it does still seem okay. You can see a metal clip holding the thing on properly and everything now, so it's all just really good. Managed to use the factory clamp, albeit in a different position here on the fuel pump sleeve, I guess. Where are we? Oh, one thing that I changed, folks. You'll probably remember I was talking about the wiring, how I'd rewired the original fuel pump stuff, and I'd soldered the new fuel pump wires onto the existing stuff, and how I'd rewired this end of it, and I wasn't happy because I couldn't get right into the main part of the connector, and I had to leave a small tail of wiring, and it was all right, and I was like, yeah, it'll be all right, but it just kept playing on my mind, folks. So I ended up just ditching the whole thing, and you can see where two of these connectors were. Let's see if I can get us in a spot here. Where two of these connectors were from the original ones, I've actually removed two of the factory connectors, which were the fuel pump positive and negative, and re-drilled the fuel pump hat and fitted sort of proper motorsport style electrical bulkheads in there. They're 85 safe as well, so they're perfectly happy working in this environment. This is exactly what they're designed for. So now, you know, I'm not concerned at all about there being anything even slightly dodgy with the electrical side of the fuel pump. And you can see on the back side here now, we just have a new positive and negative, and wiring going straight onto the connector like on the other side. So overall, I'm pretty happy with this. It's a pretty sturdy arrangement. Good pump, electrically sound, you know, all AN lines, so no issues with anything like that. All E85 safe bits and pieces putting it together with, and yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with how it all turned out. And it's not actually together for the last time, folks, too. You can see the retainer isn't on the Venturi pump assembly here. Reason being is I'm going to remake the adapter that I made here. It was really just sort of the first one that I made, and even though it fits and I probably could use it, what I'd buggered up with it is I drilled the ID of the hole through the middle of it a little bit too big, and the wall thickness is a little bit too thin for my liking. So I'm just going to have to make up a new one of those. I'm just waiting on a little bit of stock so I don't have to machine a bigger piece down to make a new one of those out of. But other than that, it's completely finished. So this will just slip straight back in. I've actually already test fitted this in the tank, and I've made up the AN lines for it that feed from here down into the filter and the ethanol content analyzer. So once I get the fuel tank ready to refit, I've just got to do a bit of paint work on it and plate up the bolts and just do a few bits and pieces to it. I'll film the reinstallation of the tank and connecting up of these AN lines and all that sort of stuff. And I'm also in the process of making up some billet brackets to hold up all the fuel lines and everything, because it's all a little bit different now. And I've got the first one made. They're all sort of looking pretty good. But anyway, we'll have a look at that shortly. But there it is, folks. I'm also tossing up putting a bit of a kit together to do an AN conversion on these fuel pump hats, with the elbows in the right sizes, and also this piece made up, just because this piece is what makes it really hard for anyone to attack this conversion unless you've got access to a lathe. Like doing the fuel pump and the electrical stuff, yeah, that's not really that big a deal, but doing the AN line conversion, as I've done here, is definitely something that you won't be able to do without that piece. And really, on a decent fuel system on this car, I think it's a must. So anyway, folks, I hope you like that. I'm currently struggling with delays on parts coming in, folks, too. If you notice, my videos have been a bit here and there lately. That's why. I've just had so many hold-ups. I've got a heap of footage done, but I've got lots of footage for bits and pieces. I haven't been able to complete stuff due to yeah, hassles with suppliers, which I'm currently going through a big drama with one of the bigger US Z suppliers. And mate, I'm just getting dicked around so much, and that's why the videos have been a bit slow, folks. But anyway, this one's all done now. So as always, folks, thanks for stopping by the Aussie Shed. Bloody pleasure to have you here. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell and all that great stuff. And the videos are going to keep coming as long as people bloody send me the parts. Jesus. Anyway, folks, I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.